It was the early 2000s, and I worked the night shift at Jinnah International Airport in Karachi. Every night, I rode my motorcycle to work, and the quiet hours always had a strange, eerie feel to them, though I never paid much attention. One night, after finishing my shift, I hopped on my bike and started the ride home. The roads were eerily empty, as it was well past midnight. As I drove through the silence, I noticed a woman sitting on the edge of the road, crying. My first instinct was to keep driving, but something about her seemed off yet compelling. I couldn't just leave her there. I slowed down and stopped a few feet away. Hesitating for a moment, I finally asked, "Are you okay?" She looked up, her tear-streaked face illuminated faintly by the moonlight. "I've lost my way home," she said, her voice trembling. "Can you help me?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of pity and unease. "Of course. Hop on." She climbed onto the back seat of my motorcycle, and I started driving. At first, she was silent, but soon she began to speak. She told me stories of the partition of Pakistan and India in 1947. Her words were so vivid, so detailed, it was as if she had lived through those horrific times. The way she described the suffering, the chaos, and the deaths sent chills down my spine. Then, as we approached a desolate stretch of road, she pointed to an abandoned area on the side of the highway. "This," she said softly, "is where I died." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I glanced at her hand as she pointed, and that's when I noticed it wasn't a normal hand. It was pale and almost translucent, like something not of this world. My entire body froze with fear, and a shiver ran down my spine. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. In sheer panic, I jumped off my motorcycle, despite the speed, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through my arms and legs, but I didn't care. I scrambled to my feet and started running as fast as my injured body would allow. I glanced back, my heart pounding like a drum, and there she was. She stood still, far away but watching me, unscathed and unmoving. Her gaze pierced through the darkness, and it was all I could do to keep running. By some miracle, a police car appeared in the distance, its headlights like a beacon of hope. I flagged it down, waving my arms wildly, and when it stopped, I babbled incoherently to the officer about what had just happened. My words tumbled over one another as I pointed back to where the woman stood. She was still there, motionless and staring. The officer looked at me with a mix of confusion and concern, but let me into the car. The second I climbed inside and slammed the door shut, I turned back to point her out again. But she was gone, vanished into thin air. Even now, I can't explain what happened that night. Who was she? What did she want? And why me? These questions haunt me every time I think about that eerie ride home. This is my first time here writing about my experience. As I am a constant reader over here and love reading other people's stories, I thought I should share some of mine as well. For now, I'm going to share my first ever paranormal experience. It's dramatic, but it's 100% true. Stay tuned for more stories. So, me and my family live abroad, and we went back to Azad Kashmir, Pakistan, after 3 to 4 years for our summer vacation. All our relatives live there, so we were very excited and looking forward to the vacation. My family and the rest of my dad's side, we all live in our grandma's house. It's a huge family. We live in a 4-story bungalow. All the family has occupied the ground floor and the first floor. The upper stories are under construction, so no one stays there yet. We often go to the terrace at night to look at stars and have a small chit-chat. P.S. A long time ago, when my mom got married into this house, my grandma told my mom that there's a presence in this house which does no harm to anyone, and it has been here since it was built in the 70s. Sometimes, while everybody was asleep, me, my siblings and cousins used to sit late night and play games and talk about a lot of stuff. We used to sleep late around 12 to 2 a.m. One night we were all sitting and having fun and talking, But that night, my uncle told us to go to the room early and sleep as they could hear us talk and laugh, and they couldn't sleep. It was around 11 p.m. at night. We all just went to our rooms to sleep. Now I remember I was the last one to go to my room, and everybody else was asleep. I used to sleep with my mom and siblings in this huge room on the first story. So after my cousins went to sleep, I came up and locked our door and went to bed. I was tossing and turning a lot for an hour or two. There are stairs attached to my room's wall for the second story. And suddenly I heard someone who was apparently wearing anklets coming down the stairs. As I mentioned, I was the last person to come to my room. Then who was this? The sound stopped for a few minutes, and now that person was walking beside my room. I was the last person to come back to my room. Then who was this? That person started walking near my bed, and now I could clearly hear the sound of the anklet. It stopped literally near my ear. I could feel the presence standing above me. The presence started walking again, but this time it just went inside this wall behind my bed. There was no window and no door, just a wall. The sound of the anklet faded. I was shivering, trembling so much that I dare not open my eyes for even a second to see who it was. I kept reading the Quran, and I didn't realize it when I fell asleep. Next day when I woke up, I instantly told my mom about this incident, and she just took me to my grandma right away. My grandma told me not to talk about this a lot, and that we all should be aware of the presence of a woman that has been residing in this bungalow since the beginning. She's a wanderer, no harm to anyone. I was scared to death. That night, all my uncles and aunties started sharing their experiences with the women in this house. It was a crazy night, and now I'm traumatized by the sounds of anklets. I wear soundless anklets. This was my first experience, and there were a lot of incidents connected to this one. Please let me know if you want to know more. Thank you. I am Sarim from the city of Lahore. This incident took place during my last semester of engineering, BS, in the month of November 2011. Now I have passed out. Our semester exams were to start in a week, and we had this course, Industrial Control Electronics, which I found a bit difficult to understand, and so did rest of the 5 guys in our group. We had this nerdy sort of a guy in our class, Ahsan Ahmed, who understood this course very well, securing the highest marks in the midterm examinations as well. He finally agreed to help us on a few very important topics that were more than likely to come in the final exam of ICE paper. He called 6 of us to come over for a night stay so that he would help us with those chapters. We got to his bungalow, which is located in a pretty secluded area of Karachi, Manghopir. I have been at his home for the very first time. It was a double-story building. We entered the main gate and went upstairs to the second floor, which only had a study room and a big veranda. We got in and put away our backpacks. One of my friends, Shizad Berkey, is a cigarette addict, so, as usual, he took out his pack of smokes and lit up one before we could proceed with the studies. In the meantime, we started joking around, playing up 3 songs on our cell phones and trolling each other, making pretty loud noises. Ahsan kept telling us to keep our voices low again and again, which we ignored. After about 30 minutes, we started studying at 1 a.m. and carried on continuously for about 2 hours and 20 minutes when Shehzad insisted us to take a break so that he could smoke a couple cigarettes. So we halted the studies for a while and again started trolling each other and playing up 3 songs at high volumes. Ahsan again told us not to make any noises and keep our voices down, but we didn't care. Suddenly I heard a bang on the door as if something struck the door, which I ignored since it wasn't that loud. After about a minute or so, it was like bang, bang, bang. Pretty fierce this time. Felt like somebody was throwing stones at the door with great force. All 7 of us in room heard it this time. We all were staring at each other's faces, startled, and having no clue who could it be at 3:20 a.m. in the morning. I asked Ahsan if it could be someone from his family, but he said no one would be awake in his house at that time. Then again it started bang, 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 even more fierce this time than before. We could also hear the sound of rolling stones after they struck the door. It continued for about 2 minutes without a break, and we all stood there in silence awaiting what would happen next. When finally it stopped for about a minute, Hassan got up and rushed towards the door. He held the door lock and then left it the next second, crying in pain and saying, "It is too hot." I went towards the door and touched the door lock with a finger, and yes, it was hot enough to fry an egg. After that, we all moved away from the door. The banging sound on the door would happen randomly and then stop. This went on until about 5 a.m. when we heard Hassan's father shouting, "Hassan, it's time for prayers," and he opened up the door without any problem. I can't tell you how happy we were to see him open the door. Blood again started to flow in our veins. We picked our backpacks and just rushed out of the room. As we descended the stairs, we all looked back at door to find the piles of stones outside the doors, but were amazed to find not even a single stone there. The door was scratchless. Hassan's father didn't hear any such bangings during the night when we inquired, nor did his mother or any of his siblings. We still can't figure out what happened that night. But yeah, I passed my industrial control electronics with a 3.3 GPA.